YouTube as usual, right around 4 p.m. every Tuesday. And we arrive here sort of in the lull. Wait, there's a plane going over. The lull between mini camp and training camp, but the Steelers are doing some business. A nice contract signing for DeShon Elliott came out today. He the strong safety who had a really nice 2024 season gets a nice pay raise. And Nick, you had an interesting observation on social media how this was good business for the Steelers, avoiding holes that could be there for next offseason. And you mentioned two other Steelers who could be in line for a similar deal. I thought that was a really good observation. What do you make of the Elliott deal, and what other dominoes could fall in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, well, this Elliott deal is good business because it's getting a guy that played extremely well under contract in a good contract. He's only getting $6 million per year. He's the 30th highest paid safety for a really good strong safety. That was one of the best strong safeties in the NFL last year. That's good business. He's probably going to see this entire contract because nearly all of it's guaranteed. $9 million of the $12 million is guaranteed. So he's under contract for 2027. That's good business. You want to sign good role players. You want to sign guys that maybe aren't the stars, right? Everyone focuses on signing star players. But signing these role player types is just as important, John. You look at good teams around the NFL, and there's a lot of guys that don't get the shine that are really good players that get these types of extensions. And the Steelers next year, and the reason I was talking about other guys like Calvin Austin and Jaylen Warren, who are the two I was really talking about on Twitter when I posted this, there are a lot of needs, John, next year in the NFL draft in the offseason. Let's just go through some of them. Cornerback, going to be a need. Darius Slay, 1-year deal. Okay, that's a need. Wide receiver, we know that. Potentially 2 wide receivers if Calvin Austin doesn't get signed. Why sign Calvin Austin? You cross one of them off the list. At the very least, you have your wide receiver 3-4, your deep threat. Boom, you got it. And then you can search for your wide receiver 2 upgrade. Running back would be a need if Jaylen Warren walks. That's another one that you would have to fill. Guard, Sayamala's in the last year of his deal. What if Broderick Jones doesn't play well? Well, then tackle becomes a need. Quarterback, the big banana of them all. Quarterback is the biggest need on this team. And so there's just so many needs. And so by signing DeShon Elliott, you don't need a strong safety. If you re-sign Calvin Austin and Jaylen Warren, you don't need a running back and you don't need a wide receiver 3. That allows you to be more flexible, John, and allows you to go full in on looking for your quarterback and looking for your wide receiver. And that's the big things. Those are the 2 big things the Steelers need to solve next year. Do they need to get their cornerback situation next year solved? Yes. We'll see where offensive line comes in. I'm assuming next year I could see a Sayamalo extension coming in or a reconciliation next year after the season if it doesn't happen this summer. And I certainly think they're going to explore all those avenues next year to fix the O-line. But quarterback and wide receiver have to be the 2 biggest focuses next year. And in order to do that, you need flexibility and the ability to be as aggressive as you want. You can't have holes littered all over the roster if you want to do that, because then you're setting your rookie quarterback up with obvious holes around them. And so that's the big thing here. So that's why I would pay these types of role players. They're not going to break the bank. And Jaylen Warren, I don't know, 6-7 a year maybe. You can extend him 2 years. Calvin Austin, 9 a year. Again, that's not much. It sounds like a lot, but look at the wide receiver market. That's not a lot of money, and it's good for wide receiver 3 production. And so that's why you extend these guys, because they're good players, and you need good players and good role players on your football team. And so that is why I would argue for extending those guys, and that's why, on top of all of that, this DeShon Elliott extension is such a good piece of business for Pittsburgh.
No, I agree, and I liked the fact that maybe we'll see some other guys getting locked up as well and avoiding those holes. But obviously we have a season right in front of us, and the tickets for the Ireland game apparently went on sale today, and it was a massive hit, like 600,000 plus people waiting in the queue to buy tickets to watch the Steelers take on the Vikings in the land of the green. So that will be a really hot ticket, and mini camp being last week, and obviously Rodgers coming in not really, basically just doing individual drills. Had the playbook printed out for him. He didn't want it on the iPad. He insisted on having it printed out. There was a tweet or a quote from him. I just ran across it right before we went on the air that says, yeah, he's gone through it. There's a lot of similar concepts from the Shanahan offense, so he's very comfortable with it. But in terms of how this offense is actually going to look, I think there's some major questions. I mean, we talked about some of the quotes from Arthur Smith during minicamp saying, hey, we didn't bring in a DK Metcalf and pay him all that money for, 3 yards in a cloud of dust or to run the wishbone. But there's also a signal being sent that Rodgers is going to have a major say on the actual plays that are going to be called starting in September. And you had a really good observation on another tweet from someone else that talked about last year they really, under Rodgers with the Jets, they really lapsed into, the quick passing game, the passing under 2.5 seconds and kind of the dinks and dunks and how defenses can really jump on that and clamp down on it. And you sort of hearken back to the waning days of Ben Roethlisberger when we had sort of the dink and dunk under Ben because he didn't have the mobility and he had to get rid of the ball, and how that kind of just really became easy to solve for defenses down the stretch. And it really wasn't the answer. And it was boring football too. I mean, let's face it. So what do you think, given everything, the eye test that you saw of Rodgers, the legs, the movement, the arm, the throws, not seeing him in actual field, what's your whole eye test for this offense under Rodgers for this coming season?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the quick game. That's a big part of it. Slants, stick, curls, like real quick hitters. That's going to be a big part of it. But I do think a large part of Ben's kind of quick game and Rodgers' quick game was the offensive line play they both had. They both had bad O-line play. And so they had to get the ball out quick. Can the Steelers' young offensive line this year give Rodgers the protection in the pocket he needs to go vertical? That's going to be the key thing. The Steelers went vertical a heck of a lot last year. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields took a lot of sacks. Not all due to protection, a lot of it due to themselves, but some of it due to protection. And so can you see Troy Fautanu slot in at right tackle and be the answer? Does the move back to left tackle make Broderick Jones the guy you thought he was? Can Mason McCormick and Zach Frazier stay on the track they're on, which is real promising? And can Isaac Seumalo stay steady? Those are your questions. I am not even kidding when I say this. People are talking a lot about different things. TJ Watt extension, Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf's impact. There is not a single more important thing on this team this year than the offensive line. The offensive line is going to dictate what this offense can do. I think this offense can be a more high kind of variance version of the one last year. Last year, down the stretch, it just went like right off a cliff, right? I think this year, and I said this yesterday, I think it's possible we get a kind of roller coaster ride where there's peaks, there's bad games, but there's really high peaks. In any week, you may not know which Rodgers or which offense you're going to get, but that type of variance and that type of up and down movement, it allows you to kind of be an offense that can go toe-to-toe every now and then with some of those top teams. And that's kind of where I view the Steelers at as an offense. And so if they can give Rodgers the protection, I mean, we're talking about a guy that under Matt LaFleur in the Shanahan scheme that he played in took the second most vertical shots in his 4 years from 2019 to 2020. Only one guy took more vertical shots in the NFL. I'll let you guess who that was. It was Russell Wilson, and that's obvious why he would. Russell Wilson's deep ball is Russell Wilson's specialty. And so Rodgers, when you talk about the vertical throws outside the numbers, second most in the NFL over that 4 years when he was with Matt LaFleur. And so to me, we're talking about that as a big part of this offense. We're talking about the fade route to DK Metcalf. We're still talking about throwing it deep to Calvin Austin. We're talking probably a little more over the middle of the field than they were under Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. That one was like crazy outlier season last year of how much they were outside the numbers. Rodgers is still below the league average. I think he's like 6% below the league average under Matt LaFleur, but it's still like way more than the Steelers were last year. So probably a little more middle of the field. It's probably a little more dig routes. Let's see how the play action game kind of figures into this. You're going to find that marriage between the Smith offense and the Rodgers offense. It's not going to be completely pure Arthur Smith offense. And so it's going to be a mix and a match. You're probably going to have some more empty. You're probably going to have some more gun. But the quick game is going to be part of it no matter what. The Steelers, though, need to make sure it can't become the only thing they do, because last year the Jets got stuck. They didn't have a run game. They had a bad O-line, pass protecting, and it didn't matter who they had at receiver. It didn't matter if they had Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson, because the quick game was the only thing that kept Rodgers upright. Rodgers' mobility, he could still move on bootlegs. He could still move a little bit. But this is not a guy that, that's scrambling necessarily all the time anymore. He's 41-42. Those hits feel a little different at 41-42 now, don't they? And so that's going to be something that Aaron Rodgers isn't going to want to take. And so as long as the Steelers have a good run game and can be efficient on the ground and then have a decent enough pass pro, you can keep that vertical element of your passing game open. And if that happens, that's when the Steelers can maybe do some things offensively. I don't think it's going to be a great offense, John, but it doesn't need to be a great offense necessarily. Can it be a respectable offense? That is the barrier they should shoot for. If you can be respectable, I think your team can do some things. That's going to be where the Steelers have to go. And I think a lot of it, John, goes back to how those big hogs do up front. I really do. I think Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu are the two most singular important players on the Steelers offense this year for how they're going to do. Those two guys are going to dictate so much of the menu and what they're able to do with Aaron Rodgers.
Respect is a great word, because I think under Ben, as that season wore on, the 2020 season you mentioned, defenses came not to respect the offense because they really couldn't do much beyond the dink and dunk, and they just throttled the life out of it. Speaking of mini camp and speaking of the offensive line, is there any evidence that you saw that we're making progress among those two big question marks that you just mentioned?
Well, I love Troy Fautanu. I think he is probably going to hit. I really do. You saw the game last year against the Broncos, and it was one game, but it was against Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito, and Bonito became one of the most productive pass rushers in football last year. And Troy Fautanu was really good against him. It was like a great first impression to me. I thought he was awesome in training camp last year. I think Troy Fautanu has a real chance to be a cornerstone for them. I'm so high on him. As long as he stays healthy, I think things are good. Broderick Jones, I hate to be pessimistic on a guy because I know he's got so much innate talent. I know he's got the right head on his shoulders, great high character player, but the tape last year is just so bad. It's so bad. He's getting beat with just, his feet are such a mess. His hand usage is out of sync. His feet and his hands, like his upper body and his lower body, aren't in sync. He's a waist bender, so he's kind of bending over while he's trying to not use his length. He doesn't even have like the snap countdown sometimes. And then there's other plays where he does the completely wrong thing on a play. Like he doesn't know what to do on a play, where he pulls when he shouldn't, or he just runs the wrong play. So here's the thing with Broderick Jones. If you want to be successful here, you got to get the basics down first. Snap count. Let's know the plays. Those are the first two things, right? You got to know, in my opinion, if you're going to be good on the offensive line. Just basics, right? Let's get that down. Okay. Being able to pick up stunts and twists, protection calls, all of that. Those are basics. If he has that down, cool. If he feels more comfortable on the left side, and I think he does. He looks more natural on the left side. He looks tight. He looks unnatural. He looks just robotic almost on the right side. People say it doesn't matter as much, and people and guys should be able to do it. Some guys can do it. Some guys can't. I think Broderick's just one of them that can't. He looks stiff. He looks uncoordinated on the right side. On the left side, he looks fluid. He looks smooth. He looks just so much more natural. And you're like, oh, this is why he played left tackle. Like, it's just more natural. The athleticism pops a little more. And so I think that's a big thing. And then before we even get into, like, the minutia of the technique from the hand uses, the footwork, all of that, that needs to take a step up. But The mental stuff, I think, is the big part where Broderick can easily take a leap. Fix up those things, clean that up, and that's a good start. And then let's see where you can go from there. But this is the year for Broderick, man. I mean, I don't love how the Steelers have managed him the first 2 years of his career. I'm on the record saying that I would have played him from the left side day one, period. But they are kind of throwing him in there. And if he doesn't show that he can be that this year, they got to go back shopping and they got to look again for another tackle. And that's not what you want, obviously. But can we get the basics down first? That's with it.
But not knowing the plays, to me, that's on him more than anything. Did you ever get the sense that, Hayes comes in as a number one? He didn't have all that much playing time in Georgia. He was one of the high ceiling guys that the Steelers have now gone away from. They're going away for the high floor. They've turned to the high floor guys, the guys that have already proven their productivity in college. He really didn't. Did you ever get the sense that he was one of these guys that are not that interested in learning the playbook? Or, what do you attribute the fact that he hasn't got the plays down and some of the more fundamental aspects?
He's a happy-go-lucky guy, and I think I don't think it's the lack of love for football. I think it's potentially one. I think even though he probably won't admit it, the move to right tackle was unnatural, probably bummed him out a little bit. They told him when he was drafted he was going to be a left tackle. He seems more energized this year. There's a locked-in focus there. I think playing at left tackle is something I think that he relishes. So I think that's part of it. I do think the mental lapses, that's about detail-oriented work over the week. And listen, if you are discouraged by moving to the side you didn't want to play necessarily, that's one way to get you out of that loop. So that's possible. That's part of it. I often say, sometimes he just kind of goes through the motions on the field, not at practice, but on tape. You know what I mean? Like sometimes there's not a ton of intensity there last year. He's playing through injury too, right? He had that elbow, that thumb injury, that wrist injury. He had like a bunch of injuries to like the one arm, and you could tell he just didn't have a ton of power behind his pop anymore. And so when you looked at him in his rookie year, that was a guy that was locked in, a little more detailed. Was he rough around the edges? Yeah, but he was a raw player. You knew he was going to be rough around the edges. Last year, it just didn't seem like the mental focus was there. And I do wonder how much of that was he came into the year being told he's going to be left tackle. Troy hurts his knee, he's done for the year, and all of a sudden he's at right tackle the whole year. Like, I think that part of it, when you are mentally locked in like that, is part of it. And so I don't think disinterested in learning the playbook is part of it. But I do think part of what Broderick's necessary issues have been are the lack of kind of stability. I think that has thrown him off, and this lack of essentially continuity in his career, just being kind of thrown back and forth between doing this, doing that. And that there's something to be said in there about how that affects your mental state as a player. I truly believe that.
Is there anything that you've noticed them doing differently with coaching him up in terms of, some of these basic fundamentals that here we are 3 years in, coming into season 3, still don't have down pat?
Yeah, well, I do think, first of all, he's focusing on just making sure he knows the plays. I think that's a big part of it. Knowing that he is locked in on learning Aaron Rodgers' snap counts, his cadences, basics like that. But, I mean, they're reworking little things. And this is kind of interesting. I thought Pat Meyer had an interesting quote about this. And this didn't get headlines. I wrote it in one of my columns. Pat Meyer said, we see on a lot of reps, Broderick do things we taught him. And then he just does one thing wrong, right? So, for example, the hands will be there, the pad level will be there, but then the footwork will be crazy, right? The footwork will be all out of line, and then he gets beat inside. But then he'll have the footwork and the pad level good, but then his hands will be wide. And then the next rep, the hands and the feet will be good, but he's playing high, so he sometimes gets beat under his pads. It's like trying to get everything to kind of connect in a chain together. Like, that's the thing with Broderick is there are reps where he has 2 or 3 or 4 things they teach him right there, and then one thing he does just ruins the rep. And I think that's the thing with Broderick that is so frustrating is just can you put it all together, right? This is the year. You got to put it all together. And so, I mean, let's look at the stats. I mean, his stats just aren't very good in terms of, pressure percentage allowed, sack percentage allowed. You look at the tape, it all backs it up. He wasn't an impactful run blocker last year. He was a very impactful run blocker as a rookie. So you hope, with him fully healthy there, with the arm now fully healed, he can be that. That's going to be a big part of things because he's going to be on the front side of a lot of these wide zone runs they're going to run this year. But the big thing is, how do you put the whole chain together? Can you play with good pad level, hand usage, and footwork all together? Because he was a raw player. He had 12 starts or so at Georgia. It was just 1 year playing. He was a very raw athlete that needed to be molded, and you got to put it all together at some point. And for these guys, for these types of tackles, it does sometimes take 3 to 4 years. I remember Pat Meyer at the combine last year. I had a conversation with him, and it was interesting. He was talking about Russell Okung. You might remember him. He was a first-round draft pick way back when. I guess not way back when. It wasn't that long ago. I think it was like 2010. And Pat Meyer was the coach there with Russell Okung. And Russell Okung, when he talked to Pat Meyer, said, the light didn't go on for me till year 5. These raw tackles can take a long time to develop. I'm not saying it's going to take till year 5 for Broderick for the light to go on, but it takes a long time. And so, I mean, this year they have to see positive signs of the light going on. They need to see more consistency there because he's all over the place technique-wise. And so he's got to put things together, even if he's doing it right. At sometimes he needs to be able to put it all together and put on some really good reps on tape.
Interesting. Well, that will be something we'll be watching in Latrobe come late July. Now we know that a lot of the Steelers players are on vacation in the lull leading up to that convening of training camp, but one person who is working is Omar Khan, as evidenced by the Elliott deal. A viewer wants to know if Khan could be cooking up something for the wide receiver room. Is there still a belief, despite what the wide receivers coach said in anointing Calvin Austin as the Steelers wide receiver 2, despite that anointment by him, is Khan working on shoring up that wide receiver room?
Well, part of it is yes, he is. I mean, they've called guys, they've talked to some guys, they've called teams. Like you've seen some of the public ones. I mean, Jonnu Smith, Kyle Pitts, Chris Olave, and Gabe Davis are very public. Davis even came to Pittsburgh for a visit. Guys, there's interest there. I actually would say right now, Gabe Davis is probably their top target. I think that's probably not going to be, popular for some people because I think Gabe Davis is somewhat polarizing in some ways. He's a big body, deep threat, but certainly not a great contested catch guy, not an elite route runner. Coming off knee injury. The reason he wasn't signed was because he's still recovering from meniscus surgery that he suffered last year in November. But I think he'll make his decision probably around training camp time. And he's visited 4 teams. He's visited the Giants, the Saints, and the 49ers. And so he'll probably decide where he wants to go. And I think, he's going to get the veteran minimum because the Jaguars are paying him $11 million this year. So he's going to get the veteran min. So that'll help the Steelers in terms of just their cap situation, trying to fit him under that. And so if that happens, I mean, I think he's going to be their answer to that. Will they continue calling on guys like Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks? Will they watch the waiver wire for guys that might come free? Sure. But, guys, I don't think there's going to be some blockbuster move here. I don't think, necessarily they're going to be trading for scary Terry McLaurin or anything. I think that one's going to be, pretty easily just a contract extension there, unless something kind of comes out of nowhere. I don't see that necessarily happening. And so right now, John, where I'm seeing this is I think Gabe Davis is the likeliest option for them. Is that a super big needle mover for me? Not really, but could him, Austin, and Wilson kind of come together to cobble the wide receiver 2-3 roles? I guess that remains to be seen. He's a different skill set from what they have. So I think that is probably their likeliest option right now.
And now for a big topic that has to be discussed in every show until something happens. TJ Watt. There were some comments by some of the national NFL gurus like Peter Schrager and Ian Rappaport and certainly Tomlin addressed it with you and the other Steelers media at minicamp that both sides want to get a deal done. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, nothing to see here. But the reading between the lines of some of the Schrager comments and the Rappaport comments, there now seems to be a strategy. Maybe it's from the Watt camp to try to wait and see what happens with the other big deals that are about to fall or fall at some point this summer, in terms of Micah Parsons and maybe Trey Hendricks, and then to see, what Watt is going to factor in there. So to me, that, goes against, the strategy we discussed is don't wait for another big deal to fall. Get it done now. But it seems like someone now is dragging feet and they want to see what Parsons get. And they want to see what Hendricks get. And they want to put Watt squarely in that mix of one of the highest paid linebackers in the NFL. They don't want to get blown out of the water by a Parsons deal.
Right. Well, they
don't want Watt to ink a deal and to get blown out of the water. Yeah.
Right. And so let's be blunt here. TJ Watt wants more than Myles Garrett. Like, that's true. That he wants more than $40 million per year. And if you don't think that little rivalry thing is fueling behind that, it is. It irks TJ Watt a little bit. But let's talk about what you're saying, John, because I think that has merit. The Steelers, obviously, I think, want to get this done as soon as possible. Because Hendrickson, Trey Hendrickson gets $37 million per year. That works in their favor probably because they can slot Watt probably at 38 or 39 right below Garrett. But if he gets 39, they're in a little bit of water there. Micah Parsons, I think, is going to get more than TJ Watt no matter what. I don't think that's even a comparison. But here's where I will throw something out. John, let's talk about agencies for a second because this matters. TJ Watt's agent is CAA. That's who represents TJ Watt, CAA. Last time this deal came around, there wasn't really a threat to TJ being the highest paid edge rusher in football. It was a foregone conclusion. So he showed up, he held in, he did all of that. Micah Parsons is represented by David Mulligetta and Athletes First. Why does this matter? One, these are two generational bag-getting agencies. David Mulligetta got Deshaun Watson that fully guaranteed contract that is still probably the worst contract in NFL history from the Cleveland Browns. CAA got Dak Prescott his record-breaking $60 million per year and the unprecedented $80 million signing bonus last year on his contract. And that is important, the Dak Prescott deal. Why is it important, John? Because here's why. Last year, do you remember all the quarterbacks that got extended around this time last year? Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa, Jordan Love, so many guys. And you know who was last? Dak, represented by CAA, TJ Watt's agency. They've done this before. Last year, they waited it out and got the highest deal on the market. For a player who I like Dak, he's not the best quarterback in football. He's not. And so they've done this before. But David Mulligetta has also done this before. And so it's going to be like a staring match between TJ Watt and Micah Parsons to see the number. Really, the Cowboys are the ones that should be getting this done. Like, the Cowboys are going to have to pay Micah Parsons $41 to $42 million per year. If TJ Watt got $40.5 million per year, Micah Parsons' contract is going up. So why wouldn't they get it done? Because he's going to be the highest non-paid quarterback anyways. TJ Watt really has no incentive to sign here unless the Steelers give him significant accommodations. And what I mean by that is average per year, guaranteed money, into year 3 of the contract, which is probably going to happen anyways. But this is going to drag on probably, unless the Steelers probably cave on some things. And that could be on the guaranteed money side. And so there is a lot of reasons for TJ Watt to not sign right now. there's a lot of reasons for the Steelers to want TJ Watt to sign right now, which is precisely why TJ Watt isn't signing right now. And so I wanted to break that connection down for you guys, because if you know why this and how economics work and why this isn't even contentious, like the Steelers aren't even mad at TJ Watt. They fully expected him to not show up to minicamp. Now, I think they'll be a little irked if he doesn't show up to training camp. I think that's going to be a little bit different. He could show up and hold in, and they would be okay with it. They've been okay with it before. But if he doesn't show up, I do think that'll be a little bit like, at least be here. But I think they know what they're in for here. And the Myles Garrett deal wrecked this entire thing for them. It really did. If Myles Garrett doesn't get $40 million per year, I am going right now and saying this, John. TJ is under contract with a new deal right now. If Myles Garrett doesn't get $40 million per year, TJ Watt probably gets $37 million per year, signs it, boom. But yesterday's price is not today's price, and so it's a leverage game. How much can you get? Last time this took before, like 2 days before the season until TJ signed his contract. We're probably going to see the politics of contract making going out again. It's just business. Simple as that. But this is how it all plays out.
Oh, wow. I'll tell you, that breakdown that you just did of the agents behind these two deals and the stare down, it does show that, Steeler fans, we're pawns in a much bigger game. These agents want to have the pelt on the wall that they have the highest deal. And the guy that represents Watt doesn't mind waiting until all the other dominoes falls to see what he's going to take, for his guys. So that portends a long summer of this thing dragging out. I think we might have time for one more quick one that just came in over the wire. Well, he's commenting on the Browns. Why would they let the Browns set the market? They clearly act out of desperation and pay more because of it. But I mean, you at the time, remember, Garrett was basically demanding a trade, right? I mean,
Yes.
He was playing pretty hardball too, right? So,
well, listen, the Steelers don't have to
Any comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers don't have to let the Garrett market set the market. But what it does do is it's going to drag that on longer, right? If the Steelers want to pay TJ 38 or 39 million, it's probably going to take until September for him to be like, okay, I'll come to that number. Until then, why wouldn't he ask for 41 or 40 and a half, whatever, right? What is TJ's incentive to sign? I completely understand that. The Garrett contract is an absolute albatross contract for a guy that at the end of his deal is going to be 34 years old. I understand it. But market dynamics work like that. TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, Aiden Hutchinson, Trey Hendrickson all look at that and say, okay, price going up. Like, that's how it works. Teams don't have to let that dictate that. But if you want the price you want, you better be ready to pay later, right? Like, you got to be ready. Like, okay, if TJ Watt holds out a minicamp and if he holds out a training camp, we're willing to accept this because we have this price that we want to pay him. And that's just contract business in the NFL. It is. It's what modern NFL politics is like around the scenes. You're accepting that deal. And so the market drives the force. The player decides the market. The team decides what they want that market to be. But the timing of that deal all comes around that. And so the Steelers don't have to let TJ Watt necessarily come over what Myles Garrett is getting, but they are accepting the longer timeline by doing that.
Right. And as you astutely mentioned, it's now not just the Garrett contract. It seems like Watt's agent wants to see what Parsons is going to get too, right? I mean, that's now in play. They want to see the Parsons deal.
Right. They want to see the Parsons deal, but the Parsons team wants to see the Watt deal. The Watt team wants to see the Hendrickson deal. They want to see the Hutchinson deal. But Hutchinson wants to see the Hendrickson deal. Like, you understand, like, all four of these edge rushers want to see the other's deal. So it's going to be who blinks first. And it's probably going to be because one of the teams gives them either, a sweetened kind of extra year of guaranteed money. The guaranteed money is a little more, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's going to be a key thing here. Micah Parsons, I think, is the only one that is going to be certain to get more than Myles Garrett. Micah Parsons is going to be the highest non-paid quarterback in NFL history this summer. It's going to happen. The question is going to be, does Watt get more? I don't know. I think when this is all said and done, John, I think TJ Watt probably ends up below Myles Garrett. I do. I think the Steelers are willing to wait him out. We've seen him do it before. They waited out Cam Hayward last year until the very end, did they not? We thought the Pat Freiermuth deal would be done way earlier than it was last year. They waited him all the way out until his price came down. And so the Steelers have been willing to wait out contracts. So I think this probably gets done like the week before week 1 in New York. And Watt probably signs for like 38, 39 million. He slots in between Crosby. He probably gets more than Hendrickson, is my guess. And that's kind of where this ends up being. And so it's just going to be the wait, and we're just going to hear about this. It's going to get done. I don't have any worry about that. I don't have any worry about TJ Watt's future in Pittsburgh. But I do think market dynamics are going to force this one to draw out a little
longer. Well, but folks, a long way to head for that TJ Watt deal, and very good analysis by Nick to show you why that is happening. And we're going to have more of his great analysis every Tuesday at 4 live on YouTube. So tune in. And until then, go Steelers.